In the bustling lanes of the small town, there was a modest diner with checkered floors, red leather booths, and the scent of fresh coffee always lingering in the air. Among the clatter of cutlery and the constant hum of chatter, a young waitress named Kajal worked tirelessly. Her blue uniform was simple, but her presence radiated warmth. She wasn't just serving food. She was serving kindness to anyone who walked through the doors. One chilly evening, as the glass door creaked open, a man wheeled himself inside. His name was Harbajan, a rugged man with a thick beard and eyes that seemed to carry 1,000 untold stories. He wore an old, faded jacket, and his wheelchair squeaked with every turn of its wheels. Most customers barely noticed him. Some even frowned, whispering judgments. But Kajal, she noticed. She saw the way Harbajan tried to hide his hunger behind a forced smile. His hands trembled slightly as he held the menu, not because of weakness, but because of hesitation. He wasn't sure if he even had enough money to order. Kajal walked over, her voice soft yet firm. "Good evening, sir. Can I get you something warm? Maybe a bowl of soup? It's on me today." Harbajan lifted his eyes, surprised. He hadn't expected kindness, not in a world where people often looked past him. For a moment he wanted to refuse, but the scent of freshly made vegetable soup reached him, and his stomach betrayed his pride. You don't have to do this," he whispered, his voice raspy. Kajal smiled, kneeling slightly so her eyes met his. "Sometimes we all need a little help." "Please, let me," she returned with a steaming bowl, the aroma filling the air. As she placed it before him, her hands brushed against his, steadying, reassuring. Harbajan's eyes softened. It had been years since someone had shown him such compassion without expecting anything in return. From that day forward, Kajal made it her routine. Whenever Harbajan rolled into the diner, there was always a bowl of hot soup waiting for him. She never asked why he came alone, or why he seemed lost in thought, staring at nothing for long minutes. She just listened, smiled, and made sure he never left hungry. The other staff often teased Kajal, calling her too soft-hearted. Customers sometimes looked at Harbajan with pity or disdain. But Kajal ignored them all. She believed kindness was never wasted. Little did she know. The man in the worn-out wheelchair carried a secret that could change both of their lives forever. And one day, with a trembling voice and eyes glistening with emotion, Harbajan would finally reveal it. "Kajal, I am not who you think I am. I am a billionaire." Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Every evening, as the orange sunset poured its golden glow through the diner's glass windows, Harbajan rolled in. And every time, Kajal was there, ready with his favorite steaming bowl of soup, served with the same gentle smile. But their meetings were no longer just about food. At first, they talked little, just a polite thank you from Harbajan, and a warm "you're welcome" from Kajal. But slowly, the walls between them began to crumble. One evening, as Kajal wiped down a nearby table, she asked softly, "Harbajan ji, do you have family? Someone who takes care of you?" There was a pause. His eyes grew distant, as though she had opened a door he had long kept locked. Finally, he shook his head. "Not anymore. People leave when life gets hard. It's better not to expect anyone." Kajal felt a tug in her heart. She too knew what loneliness tasted like. Her mother had passed away when she was young, and her father's debts had forced her into endless shifts at the diner. She had dreams of studying, of becoming more than just a waitress, but responsibilities weighed heavier than desires. From then on, their conversations deepened. Harbajan began sharing fragments of his life. Not everything, but enough. He told her of his love for books, his admiration for poetry, and the little joys he found in observing people. Kajal, in turn, shared her struggles, her fears, and her stubborn hope that life would someday reward her patience. Sometimes, Kajal would sneak him an extra piece of bread or a slice of pie, pretending it was leftover, though both knew she was lying. Other times, when the diner was quiet, she would sit across from him, listening intently as though every word he spoke carried meaning. The other waitresses whispered among themselves, "Why is she wasting so much time on him? He's just a crippled man with no future." But Kajal never wavered. To her, Harbajan was not a burden. He was a soul with dignity. a man with a story that deserved to be heard. Yet something always lingered in Harbajan's eyes, a flicker of mystery, as though he carried a world he was unwilling to reveal. Sometimes Kajal caught him looking at the window, lost in thought, his jaw tightening as though battling an unspoken truth. One night, a storm raged outside. The diner was nearly empty, the rain hammering against the glass. Kajal noticed Harbajan staring into his untouched soup, his hands trembling slightly. "Harbajan ji, are you all right?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. He looked up, his eyes glistening. For the first time, his mask slipped, and Kajal saw not just a weary man in a wheelchair, but someone burdened by secrets. "Kajal," he whispered, "you have shown me more kindness than anyone in years. One day, I will tell you who I really am, but for now just know, your kindness is not wasted." Kajal's heart raced. She didn't know what he meant, but she didn't press him further. She simply smiled and placed her hand gently over his, whispering, "Until that day comes, I'll still be here. With your soup." And in that quiet diner, amidst the storm outside, a bond was sealed. One built not on wealth or appearances, but on compassion, trust, and something deeper, neither dared to name. The bond between Kajal and Harbajan grew unshakable. She looked forward to his visits, and he, for the first time in years, felt he had a reason to live. But with every laugh they shared, every story exchanged, the weight of his secret pressed harder on his chest. One evening, the diner was unusually quiet. Kajal poured him soup as always, but she noticed something different in his demeanor. His eyes weren't distant today, they were restless, burning with conflict. "Harbajan ji," Kajal finally said, "sometimes it feels like you're hiding something. I don't need to know if it hurts you, but I want you to know that you can trust me." Her words struck him like a blade of truth. For years, Harbajan had lived with a dual identity. To the world, he was just a man in a broken wheelchair. But in reality, he was the heir to a billion-dollar business empire, a fortune he had walked away from. Taking a deep breath, Harbajan began, "Kajal, my life hasn't always been like this. There was a time when people knew my name. I lived in mansions, wore the finest suits, traveled the world. Money was never an issue. But somewhere along the way, I lost everything that mattered." Kajal's eyes widened, but she stayed silent, urging him to continue. "My family built an empire, real estate, hotels, technology. I was born into luxury, but also into a cage. Everyone around me was fake. Friends, relatives, even the woman I loved. They all loved my wealth, not me. And when tragedy struck, when I lost my legs in that accident," his voice cracked, "those same people who once bowed before me turned away. I was no longer their golden heir. I was just a burden." Kajal's throat tightened. She reached for his hand, her touch steady and kind. "They left you?" she whispered. "All of them. Even my fiancé. She told me she couldn't live with a cripple." He smiled bitterly. "Can you imagine? The man she loved one day became worthless the next." Silence fell between them, broken only by the ticking clock of the diner. Kajal's eyes welled up, but not with pity, only with respect for the strength it took to survive such betrayal. "But if you're a billionaire," she began hesitantly, "why are you here living like this?" Harbajan leaned back, his gaze fixed on her. "Because I wanted to see who would feed me when I had nothing. Who would look at me as a man, not a bank account. And do you know what I found, Kajal? I found you." Her heart pounded in her chest. For a moment she didn't know if this was real or a dream. The man she had been feeding soup every night wasn't just a broken soul. He was a billionaire, hidden in plain sight, searching for something money could never buy. And though Kajal had always believed life had little to offer her, in that moment she realized this encounter was no accident, it was fate. Kajal sat frozen in her chair, her mind whirling. The man she had been feeding soup to every evening was not just a stranger in need. He was Harbajan Singh, heir to one of the largest business empires in the country. But for her, nothing had changed. Whether he was rich or poor, billionaire or beggar, he was still the same man who sat in front of her with weary eyes and a gentle soul. "Harbajan ji," she finally whispered. "Why are you telling me this now?" He smiled softly, though there was pain behind it. Because, Kajal, for months you have treated me like a human being, not a title, not a wallet. You didn't look at my chair, you looked at me, and I can't keep lying to the only person who's shown me real kindness. Her eyes glistened, but she shook her head. I never wanted anything from you, Harbajan. Not your money, not your name, just your friendship. His hand trembled as he reached across the table, covering hers with warmth. And that's exactly why I want to give you everything. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The next week, Kajal's life began to shift. A black luxury car pulled up outside the diner one evening, and for the first time, the staff saw Harbajan differently. He was escorted by men in suits, yet his eyes searched only for Kajal. He told her about his plans, how he wanted to rebuild his company not with greed, but with compassion. How he wanted her by his side, not as a servant of kindness, but as a partner in life. Kajal, he said one night, his voice thick with emotion. You gave me dignity when I had nothing. You fed me with your hands when the world turned its back. Now I want to feed your dreams. Study, live, grow. I will make sure you never have to sacrifice again. Tears streamed down Kajal's face. She had never dreamed of wealth, only of peace, respect, and love. And in Harbajan's eyes she saw all three. Months later, the world was stunned when the headlines broke. Billionaire heir returns with a bride, the waitress who fed him daily. The very people who had once abandoned him now whispered in awe. But neither Harbajan nor Kajal cared for the noise. Their story wasn't about wealth, it was about humanity. And every evening, no matter how grand their home or how busy their lives, Kajal still made him a bowl of soup with her own hands. Not out of habit, out of love, because for them, it had all begun with a single bowl of soup and a kindness that money could never buy.